Yes, here we go. It's the Monday Club. We're back. The staple show of the bus always has been the Monday Club. It was our debut show. Looking back, Jonathan, coming up for 2 years now. No, still, nearly 2 years. When was it?
Not far off.
Beginning of December. Yeah. You were the first guest the bus ever had. I think that was on a Monday as well. Could be wrong. Might be the double noon show. Who cares?
I mean, it sounds good.
Yes.
We're going to say it was a Monday.
Sounds good, mate. Sounds good. What we're saying is this is steeped in history and tradition, the old Monday Club. Yes. Anyway, it's good to have you on, mate. Sorry I missed last week. I'm just sick of getting a pumper at sudden death. I'm not going to lie to you, mate. So I just take the odd Monday off as and when it suits.
You'd have probably won last week as well. You'd have probably won last week.
So I'm told, mate. So I'm told. I can't even bring myself to watch you competing at sudden death anymore. I just can't do it. Anyway, we'll do all that good stuff. We'll get stuck into the good, the bad, and the ugly of modern day Celtic, which is what the show is called this week. Do give us a like, do us a good share. As always, slag the slightly still wet from the shower hair. If you want to become a Bhoycie Bus member like Alistair Jack, like Monty, like Jim Dolan, like Pam, like Gary Brown, like Charles Smith, like Martin Kay. So many of you. Pam, she's in there as well. Did I already say Pam? Who knows? But yeah, if you want to do all that, then brilliant. We appreciate it all. Just got the usual banners there. Also, give us a like right now if you are on the bus, because there's 40 of you live right now. We normally do about quadruple that on a Monday. We know there's some meat competition out there, so we want to be ahead of the game. So do give us a wee like, and it helps. What is called, Jonathan, the algorithm, which I'm still trying to get my head round as I repeat to many. If anyone does think I've got a handle on that sort of thing, they are sorely mistaken. I don't have a Scooby-Doo. If you want to give us a wee share on your socials, that always helps. Feel free to do so. And if you want to subscribe, the subscribe button is there. It's absolutely free. Our content is always free. The Bhoycie Bus membership thing is totally optional. Subscribing, though, isn't optional. You've got to do it. It's free. And hit the bell, and then you'll never miss a show going forward. Enough of that crap. Jonathan, take it away. It's Monday.
Well, Russell, looking back over the weekend, Celtic were entering the Livy Lions' den, and if Stephen Gerrard is watching, I am talking about metaphorical lions. However, metaphorically speaking, Celtic were like wild wildebeests, with Matthijs and Maida leading the line as they stampeded over the Livy Lions and sent them packing back up the road. And when you're looking at it, Brendan may well have entered the Celtic Park jungle in the eyes of many of the supporters as a snake. But what we witnessed at Almonvale at the weekend there was a man who may have entered as a snake, but when the stewards were acting like a pack of hyenas against one of our own cubs, the king of the jungle returned to put them back in their place. It wasn't so much the lions, Russell, when we were looking at Ibrox. It was more like kittens for the Rangers faithful as they had to watch Mickey Beale claw his way to another undeserved 3 points. However, with the Bears beginning to round on their manager, Mickey Beale is beginning to learn the first rule of the jungle, and that is, it is survival of the fittest. And in the animal kingdom right now, Mickey Beale finds himself bottom of the food chain. Dinner will soon be served.
Oh! That's the best yet. That's ridiculously good. That's the... How do you even... I'm away. I'll see you later. We're on here, but Jonathan can just do the rest of the show himself. Fuck this. No wonder he wins at sudden death. I don't have brains like that. Wow. That was outstanding. John O'Keevens, whatever your name is, that was outrageous. Anyway, apology if my connection's going to be a bit down, by the way. I think we are having a few Wi-Fi issues. I don't know if I'm in and out, Jonathan. You can keep me in the loop.
I can hear you all right. I can hear you all right. Just a wee bit blurry, but your sound seems fine.
I'm a bit blurry. It's amazing. I'm in full HD at my end and looking every age of 35. Anyway, bank holiday weekend. It's great. Eh? Were you off today?
No, I was working, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I had to do a bit
no
of work
time
this
off for
morning.
me.
I had to do a bit of work this morning because there was a few moving parts at the work. But other than that, I've been off. Had a great start to the day. I went and put 60 quid. No. I get the story wrong. I put £40 on my wee leggy key, and then when I put it in, it was at 59.
That's all right.
30 quid profit. I then broke my Hoover when I was hoovering, right? And I thought, I'll buy a new Hoover. eBay's offering me a £16 discount at the checkout. I hit buy it now, which turns out because I use eBay that much, I bought it right there and then. Didn't get the chance to put my £16 discount in, and I've now bought an £80 Hoover that I really don't need for the size of my place. But it's done. So it's in one hand and out the other. It's the story of my life. Anyway, we'll talk about Celtic. That's far more exciting. The good, the bad, and the ugly I call modern day Celtic, Jonathan, because midweek, you've not been on obviously since before the Champions League game, and that turned into a bit of a rantathon between Wednesday and Thursday. In particular, the boys were more balanced on Friday as they tend to be, but on Wednesday and Thursday, it was very much a case of ranting at the off-field, not necessarily issues. I would call it more attitude that Celtic have as a football club, and as always, it all changes around by the weekend once we get some domestic bliss back in there. And I am as guilty as anyone for falling in that trap. I take my eyes away from the week before. I forget about it all the second we get that result, the result in the week in our the area we've dominated for years and years. There's something of a comforting factor in that, Jonathan, but it also means it removes that harsher eye and that fairer eye, I suppose, that we shine upon the club every now and then after bad European games. But again, you then head into a new week full of optimism. Europe won't come around for another couple of weeks, I dare say, after 6 games. It won't come around till next season again anyway. You never know. Hopefully not. But are we always going to be lopsided in our views because we end up when the sterner tests are invited to Celtic, they tend to come in Europe, they tend to be so few and far in between that when it's the domestic bliss, more of the time, next enough, all of the time, that we can just comfort ourselves in that and everything's going to be okay. We've seen both worlds this week, haven't we?
Yeah, we have, and I think we end up bigging up games like Livingston away after a poor result midweek. I think it was certainly a game that was there for the taking. If we'd approached the transfer window correctly, which has been discussed at length, and then obviously you're then looking at that wasn't a good result in the middle of the week. Let's not compound this by then going to a notoriously difficult venue for us over the years at Livingston and making it worse. And what we ended up doing was actually making it a very comfortable afternoon on Saturday, and it almost makes you forget about what happened in Europe because we ended up being so convincing against Livingston. And it's almost like it's going back to familiar territory. When you go back into Scottish football, it's waters that we like because we know we're able to get the results that we need. We know that we're better than any other team in the country. And it is a bit, comforting when you're getting these results. However, we still need to be looking at European football and trying to make inroads in that as well. And whilst obviously taking nothing away from what was a really good, particular managerial performance, I felt on Saturday. I felt the manager got it spot on, and he's beginning to flex his muscles. I think now, certainly domestically, anyway, that he's back, and he'll be looking at these European games. And I think partly he's been dealt a bad hand by what's happened in the transfer window. He's partly been dealt bad luck with what's happened with the players that have since become unavailable for him. But he's going to have to try his best to try and work his magic on the European stage with what he has. And, I think games like Livingston, though, Russell, I think they'll help build Brendan Rodgers and the team up towards competing in that, because they were faced with a real test, when they go down to 10 men in that game. And, Brendan had the answers for that test. And at no point did it really look like Celtic were in any danger, even when they went down to 10 men, of actually dropping points in the game. And, for a large period, it didn't even feel like we were a man down in the match. So if he can find ways to give the players the confidence, we've seen in Europe, we've been able to win games with very shoddy backlines indeed, under the likes of Strachan, etc. It can be done. It's just really a question of how we go about doing that this time around, and whether we still have the belief and the appetite that we can still cause dents in Europe and take results, because the players are gaining confidence, and I think the manager will instill even more into them after results like the weekend.
Results like the weekend absolutely instilled confidence. It was a monkey off the back for Brendan. I quoted it at the weekend on PMP. I've still not bothered to do the research to find out if it's accurate. Is that his first one at the Spaghetti Head?
Yep. Yeah, I listened to your post-match tonight, and I was like, yeah, no, you're definitely right. I think he went there twice, and he didn't win either of them.
So it was only twice he'd been there. It did seem like it was worse than that. I think there was spells. Ange's first trip there was something along the lines of we hadn't won there in 7 years or something like that. And I think it was maybe getting dressed up to be more of a poor record than maybe it had been over there. You're right, the results like that will build the confidence. What are the results like last week though, tie in though? Because we need to be balanced. And I think the good, the bad and the ugly is very much there to be seen. We've got the good, which is we've got a manager in situ who's dictating outcomes where others might have failed had they got the job. And I think when we look at that result at the Spaghetti had 3-0. You speak about the 10 men. I felt Celtic got better as after they went to 10, which is bizarre to say in itself. That's because Brendan tactically is just spot on. Many will point, including myself, to the wee moment where he takes Cal aside and there's a lot of, the Brendan hand signals, the magic at work. But I also think there's still another 45 minutes to go after that, which he's managed very well, and the team managed very well. They deserve a lot of credit. Also, that's still on the back of an away result last week. I think we shouldn't just let go of instantly because we get a good result against Livingston. This is where I always want balance in the conversation. This is the only way I think Celtic fans can get a far, far more rounded opinion on the club that we all dote on and support and love. And that is by contrasting and comparing the good and the bad, the standard of opposition, and how we arrived at both outcomes. One was a defeat, one was a win. We arrived at the defeat and many turned their ire, not to the players in the park, but to the board. When we get a good result, many turned it to the manager and the team on the park. What does that tell you, Jonathan?
Yeah, it's one of those ones, I think, when you're looking at it, that, Brendan Rodgers comes with these expectations that he's going to be, and he is, a top-level manager. And I think when he goes into European football, we have a level of expectancy there that we didn't necessarily have under Ange Postecoglou. I think if Ange was still in charge and the similar result had played out and performance had played out against Feyenoord, I don't think people would have been as disappointed. That's what my gut feeling is. I think we would have dressed Feyenoord up to been better than they were, because we might not have felt we were quite at that point. But I always think when it comes to having an elite level manager like Brendan Rodgers, he's going to always come under that higher level of scrutiny. Unfortunately, with that, then you're looking at games like, Feyenoord, and perhaps you've got to remember he is a bit handicapped with the team he was able to put out for various reasons. That he's not going to be able to work miracles every single time, not least when this is, the first Champions League game for a lot of these players. Bear in mind what we were expecting to be going into this year was we'd still have a lot of the players that played in it last year, particularly our top ones, and going into it again, and also being complemented by some real quality additions, which hasn't so far materialised. Of course, it's a bit early to write some of them off, but there's no, immediate ones that are standing out to me as if they're going to make the grade at that level. I'm sure most of the signings will probably be fine for domestic football. And then obviously if you go into the domestic games and you get results, then obviously it does turn the narrative back around, and we start going back towards feeling like we're going to be okay, we're going to get results in Europe, and that's just the nature of the beast. It's just one of those ones where when you're looking at Scottish football, the standard and the difference between Celtic and the Scottish clubs is, pretty similar, I would say, to this, the gap between Celtic and the bigger European teams as well.
When do we stop judging it, though, by Scottish football as a whole and just start judging Celtic by the standards we expect of Celtic? And I think that's the difficulty is obviously you're playing in Scottish football, but I think sometimes it's a bit of a get-out clause. I think it's a get-out clause, and I think wins like the weekend, obviously we want these results, right? But I think they end up, in essence as well, not that I'm upset we won, I don't want this to sound wrong, but when we win, it instantly just seems to not paper over the cracks from the week before, but I think in a lot of minds' eyes, it actually erases what's happened only 4 days before. And that's where I think we end up in the dangerous territory again. We go out to Europe, for example, after a group stage, and we spend 6-7 months back in domestic bliss, a summer reflecting on another treble or a double it might be this year, you never know, might be nothing, I doubt it. But whatever trophies that everyone won, we reflect on that, we bask in that glory, and by the time Europe comes round again, it's like a wake-up call that seems to only last for a couple of days, because domestic bliss in between that will ensue, such as brilliant wins like at the weekend now. We always want to be winning these games. But am I being greedy by thinking there should be a combination away Celtic by now, with the amounts of stabs they've had at Champions League football over the years, that they could have combined far better how they get domestic bliss, as it were, and some positive European results that actually affect outcomes, that actually get you into potential of qualifying for knockout stages, potentially navigating knockout matches. This is where my frustration lies, and I think it's fair to always be reactive to the most recent result. There's a famous saying, you're only as good as your last game, and that might lie in a lot of fans' mind's eye, but I would rather reflect on it as a whole and go, I felt we had a winnable game midweek, despite the injuries we had. As Mark said so poignantly on Thursday, it was really centre-halves we were lacking. Other than that, the team was pretty much first choice, bar a favourite or two of others that they might have wanted to have played instead. But the centre-halves aside, that was a team there for the taking, I think, in that away game. The substitutes bench couldn't affect said outcomes because it's not been tooled up enough. We then go to Livingston with same under par squad as such that everyone was ranting about not being strengthened enough in the summer. We get a great result, and suddenly it feels like we go back into that comfortable stream to lie in, Jonathan, and that seems to be the one of domestic bliss.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of these ones that because of how football's kind of panned out for us, the last time we were in the last 16 in the Champions League was about 10 years ago, roughly speaking, under Lenny. There's not been a lot of European success whatsoever in those last 10 years. And you're now getting to a point where a lot of fans, particularly the younger ones that are coming through, won't even remember the last time Celtic won a European game, after Christmas, because that's going all the way back to 2004. So there is something there that does need to be addressed, absolutely. But I think in some ways the fans, particularly the younger ones, I can see how they can almost end up falling back into that comfort blanket of the domestic football, because that is where we tend to get the results. And, because Celtic have went for so long now, it's just became a trend that European football, and it's almost conditioning people to think that European football is really just a bonus, and we're really just there. I think a lot of people now use the Participants Award, and that's kind of what it is. It's almost as if Celtic are there just picking up the Participants Awards for being in amongst the big boys rather than seriously competing. And we've both seen it in our times as Celtic supporters that Celtic have proven in the past that despite the chasms that sometimes exist in terms of quality, in Celtic's teams and some of the teams they've beaten over the years under Strachan, and even O'Neill, that Celtic can do that, and Celtic can, raise their game and do something more. What's happening now, though, is I think the board have got to a point where they begin to realise that so many fans are now looking at it, and because it's been so long since we've had any European success, I wonder if Celtic fans are almost beginning to get to the stage where they're quite accepting of the situation. A lot of them, not all of them, of course, but I think there is almost a resigned acceptance to the fact that Europe is not a level that we're going to be able to compete at when it comes to the Champions League. And that's something we need to change. First of all, I think there needs to be a switch in mindset across the club, and that will include the supporters as well if we're going to make inroads into it. And I think we'll get a better feel for exactly where we are as a club, I think, when the first home game is played in the Champions League and we find out just what Celtic Park has to bring to the table this time. And is it going to be another tourist attraction sort of day out, for the likes of Lazio, or is it going to be one of those throwback games where the crowd are up for it, the players are up for it, we turn it into an intimidating atmosphere, and we go out and we actually put on a performance that, merits the fact that we're in the competition. We believe we deserve to be in the competition, and not only that, we believe we're going to compete in the competition, because that, for me, is what's been missing a lot of the times, that Celtic have been in Europe over the past few years. I think the board absolutely have not helped the situation at all with how the window has went. But I think if we're keeping our eyes on the board, as you like to say, the board, I think, have seen how unsuccessful we've been in Europe, and are almost beginning to take that for granted, that the fans are now almost resigned to accepting that the domestic bliss will quickly ease over any pain of a European defeat, particularly even if it's a heavy one.
Well, I think that's the interesting aspect, isn't it? I mean, when it comes to Europe, I was suggesting with Terry the other night that sometimes it can feel like once it becomes a generational thing, and it's a couple of generations now, you've had the same board incumbent, it ends up. Can you still hear me okay?
Yep, I can still hear you. Yep.
Cool. It almost becomes like there's an apathy that's then generational, and that becomes fan bases conditioned to start thinking Europe's too big. It's too big a hill to climb, too big a mountain to climb. If you like, it's because of this. It's because of that. I think, sadly, domestic bliss, Brendan will deliver with such ease. I know the League Cup was I think a result that can happen at the earliest stages of any managerial tenure. The reason it's viewed upon so differently with Brendan in charge is because of Brendan's success the time before, albeit with a completely different set of players in a different time. But other than that, I think once he's got his mojo, as I think he is already getting together, Jonathan, we now can tell he has pretty much got a good handle on this whole domestic game. That'll do enough fans now. That'll do the board. And Europe becomes a back burner. It's a weird one. It's hard to fathom, or hard to get into words where I find Celtic right now, the modern day Celtic. What is it we're looking for this season as a family? So let us know in the comments, because I'm always intrigued by that. I don't quite know where I'm at, whether I'm excited, and I think that's the Brendan factor, and maybe just even myself, just being an average Joe, mate, who will end up getting his kicks out of domestic bliss this season again, and the results that will ensue, and the little moments with the cub, as you were describing at the top of the show, that Brendan looked after as the king, and these being sort of my glorious moments of the campaign. Or will the ambition ever get to the stage where the real thrills, the real sort of moments that you will look back on in 20 years' time, will occur in Europe ever again? It's difficult to find out where Celtic find themselves. Are they lost a wee bit in between?
I think they are trying to discover where they fit into the European landscape. I think there's no two ways about it. I mean, let's be frank about it. Celtic haven't really contributed much to the coefficient for a number of years now, and the main reason we're actually in the Champions League, unfortunately, if we're dealing in harsh truths, is because our rivals across the city have been doing a lot more damage in Europe than we have, and that's something that we should be looking to address on our side, because, at the end of the day, if Rangers are proving that they've been able to do it, and get to, a European final only just a couple of years ago, then it is possible. There is ways of doing it. And, Celtic need to readdress whatever the mindset is here. And by no means is this a fault of the manager that's in the door at the minute. I think Brendan Rodgers absolutely has the right mindset in terms of European football and what he wants to achieve with this club. And I think he might be one of the few, though, in that building that genuinely believes Celtic can still do damage at the absolute top level in European football. Brendan Rodgers hasn't came back here to be playing Europa League group stage football in a couple of years as the coefficient falls down. and he's then having to try and negotiate qualifiers and possibly falling into the Europa League and playing Europa League groups. No, he's came back to play against the best teams that Europe has to offer, and he's not came back just to play against them. He's coming back here to try and get some big scalps back to Celtic Park, because it's been far too long since Celtic have actually managed to achieve, a massive result where they've been up against it, against one of, Europe's elite. You're going back, you probably are going back to Lenny, really. Brendan had a few close calls in his first time around against some of the top teams in Europe, and he certainly had us competing with the likes of Bayern Munich, and Manchester City at home. I fully expect him, once he's got himself comfortable, which he looks like he is now, with the job again, with the fans now, I think, coming back onto his side completely. I think any lingering fans that weren't sure about him will have been won over, not just after iBox, but again at the weekend, with how he's managed to tactically showcase just how good a manager he is. And then obviously there is a little bit at the end as well, which it might seem like pandering a little bit to the fan base, but people will lap that up. They love stuff like that. We're kidding ourselves on if we say we don't. And Brendan knows that all too well. He saw an opportunity to me, and he damn sure made sure that he took advantage of it, because if he can get the club and the supporters in line with each other, then that already gives him a much better chance, particularly in the home games in Europe. And that's what he's going to be targeting, because that, historically, if Celtic are to have a good European campaign, it all begins at home. Always has been that case, even going all the way back to Martin O'Neill. And, when Celtic do well, it's built on being solid at Celtic Park. And that is what I think his first job is to do. And in order to do that, he has to get the belief amongst his players up to the same level that he has for where this club should be at. And if you're able to, again, install that belief into the players, it'll rub off on the supporters on those big days. And all of a sudden, then you do have a wave of momentum going into clashes like, the likes of Lazio and Feyenoord. And when that momentum is there, that can be your 12th man that pushes you over the line. It's just the case that he needs to be able to install that confidence in them. And he's probably, as I say, it goes back. This might not happen this year now because of the transfer window, but I think he can still work towards that with the players he has, because he is such a good manager. Do not be surprised if, come, match day 3 or match day 4, he does produce a performance and get something out of one of these bigger games. I'm not sure how long it's going to take him to install that belief into the players. I think it might be a case there'll be a couple more games, and it might come too late in this group stage for it to be of any lasting impact perhaps this season, but it might set the tone going into next one if he's able to hold on to the players. And if, and it's a big if, the board actually do their part of the bargain, which so far I think everyone can see they haven't really done since Brendan's came back in.
Let's talk about the domestic bliss, Jonathan. How good were we at the weekend? I thought there was a lot of aspects of that performance to be very, very quietly, feeling gallous about, I would say. I think we were very good at times. That's the game management will be the go-to phrase, I think, but the players are now also obviously grasping their roles as well. I think that's undeniable. And when you've got that and a manager like Brendan at the helm, it's a win-win, isn't it? It's a complete win-win, because it means you've got buying into the methods of an elite manager, all under your nose at Celtic. Yes, a rocky start in terms of the draw with St Johnstone, the defeat to Kilmarnock, but as Brendan then, a manager who's finding his poise, not just the incident with the fan on the pitch, but a manager who's finding his poise and his swagger when he said in his post-match, I thought we were struggling just now. I don't know if you've seen that. We're meant to be struggling. That was his quip straight back when it was quoted 5 wins from 6 in the League One draw. Livy away, Aberdeen away, Rangers away. It's Motherwell away next. We've got the right guy there to navigate these games. And of course, once you get them out the road, the chances are the better teams you might have to face again another once away, depending on how the fixtures all work out. In fact, no, you need to play everyone. You play some teams twice away. I'm getting myself confused. But I just think that the manager in situ is the best possible place to deal with that. Do you think that when he's saying, I thought we were struggling, is that him creating that siege mentality that we're beginning to warm to again, Brendan? Is this more point scoring? What I like about the big man is he does it after events. He does it after 3 points. He'll get his wee slide digs in, mate. Not beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, he's another one. He's like Ange Postecoglou. He knows how to manage the media in Scotland, and they are actually acutely aware, shall we say, Russell, this media, that they won't be able to take Brendan for a ride. He's too sharp and he's too clever for them when it comes to any sort of question that they want to fire his way, and he's not. He's also very good at getting the narrative across that he wants to get across. And, he'll remember things. I think he's the type of manager. He'll be a bit like Martin O'Neill, I think, that will remember when the media have irked him and pissed him off. And I think the way that they were probably narrating things at the start of this season and, trying to make it seem as if all was not well at Celtic Park, after the defeat to Kilmarnock and then the draw to St Johnstone, I think Brendan was making his points there that, well, you might be saying that, but we went to, 3 very difficult away fixtures, 3 of the toughest away fixtures in the league this season already, and we've managed to come away with 9 points out of 9. When it comes to domestic football, this man knows how to get job done. It's as simple as that. Cup football is always going to be a bit trickier, and we're probably just one of those ones where we've been a bit spoiled by the success that we've had, the truth's been told, because anything can happen in a one-off cup match. And I think that sort of thing is going to happen. You're not going to win trebles every year. It used to be a case that you would go a long periods of time without winning them. Martin O'Neill, when he won his first one, Celtic had gone for 30-odd years without winning one, and then we weren't going to win one for another 15 years after that. So, but in no account should a treble be something that we're expecting as a minimum from any Celtic manager at any point. They're to be cherished and really enjoyed when they come along. And I think we almost get now into the sort of mindset because, again, this is because of Brendan, by the way. We're now in this mindset where we just expect to almost win trebles because he was so good at it the first time around. But if you're asking me how well he's going to do domestically, he's going to be absolutely fine domestically. He's not going to have a problem. He's probably laughing because I think he would have expected more of a challenge from our rivals. It doesn't look like that is materialising for me from what I've seen of them so far this season. So I think that's probably given him a bit of comfort there that he can also perhaps look in the next few weeks, because I think Rangers might drop more points based on what I've seen of them. He could potentially be able to juggle his team a bit more for the European games when he's got a few more players fit. And he might be able to experiment with a few more different ideas that he has in certain fixtures, I suspect, as this year goes on, because the way it's going at the moment, for me, I think Celtic will not only win this league title, I think they're going to win it at an absolute canter. This will be the most Celtic have won a league title by in a good number of years since before COVID. I'm quite happy to go on the record and say that based on what I'm seeing at the moment from both clubs. So I don't see domestic football being the big problem for them. I think a lot will probably depend on what happens for a lot of people in terms of domestic bliss and whether he wins the Scottish Cup or not, if we take the fact that he is probably going to win the league title. But for me, if he was to only win the league title but make inroads in Europe, then again, I still consider that to be a very successful time of it. It's just about whether or not he can find the ways to get the results in European football to kind of match what he's trying to do domestically. And that's always going to be the difficult challenge for him. But it's one that Brendan will relish, absolutely.
When you talk about the points gap at the top, that you're happy to be on record, I don't know if speaking on the Bhoycie Bus we can really categorise as on record.
on the record. Well, they call us the panel sometimes and all sorts on here.
You're right, mate. You're right. I know. It was on record. They said it on the Bhoycie Bus. Nobody cares, mate. Nobody fucking cares.
That on Football Scotland's Twitter. Jonathan Boyce quotes, league title race is over.
I don't see that happening anytime soon.
No,
sadly, because we're desperate for jobs in the MSM like the rest of them. All right, but what I will say is, you talk about the challenge in front of Brendan and expect it to be a bit bigger. I don't know if you listened to the phone in at all before we started. As I say, I'm determined at some point this season I'll do a watch along with Super Scoreboard. I won't be able to play it over the speakers, but I think we could all do a watch along 6 o'clock after they get their next humping domestically, just for the crack, and we'll react together on the bus to some of the callers phoning in. But undeniably, when we talk about a challenge in front of him, that challenge seems to be falling apart in front of our eyes. Even if they win, they seem to be absolutely unenamoured, in fact, almost disgusted at the guy they've got in charge. I forecasted this a year ago. Not a year ago, but 9 months ago, 2 months into his reign, you talked that much. I said that'll be his downfall. I knew it straight away. I went, that he talks too much, that they'll start using those words against him. Of course, naturally, now you do see that a lot. And I wonder now, when you look at how tempted their board must be to get rid of their own manager based on the fan pressure that's now being put on him. And even though, if we talk about the Europe balance and stuff, I think if we beat a Real Betis, whether we were in the Europa League or Champions League, we beat that same Real Betis team, I think we'd be shouting that for the rooftops if we beat them 1-0. I'll be completely frank about that. I admit it. But for whatever reason, they seem to be at pains to want rid of this Muppet. And I don't blame them for that, because he is a chancer, he is a charlatan, he is an absolute apologist to himself. And all the benefits he had of being inheriting another team before, he seems to want to play all the old players now anyway. He's under immense pressure. If they do go through, which I think they will, a managerial change this campaign, that almost rubber stamps a title for Celtic. And that then, again, to combine it with the European debate we're having, would then elevate us to this next version of the Champions League that's obviously brewing away at the moment. And if the coefficient goes our way and Rangers get a few of those wins in the Europa League, a few more, and hopefully we do our bit, more importantly, obviously, we'll surely pull further away again, won't we?
Well, we should be. We should be. I mean,
can we pull further away? In fact, when you look at it, I mean, I know they might win a League Cup, but this is the odd trophy sort of syndrome they seem to have, isn't it? When you look at the finances and what Celtic have got at their disposal right now, and Celtic are a reactive board. That's a reactive board that are in charge of the club, whether we like that or not, and that's not me being a dick. It's just a fact. They have got the tools and the wherewithal to end up putting the pressure down, if need be, and spending a few quid that can get you out of trouble if need be come in January. But I think they're falling apart over there already. And not even overall that much in terms of results. It's just the fact that I think they've fallen out of love with a guy who was once a prick, looks like a prick, talks like a prick. Guess what? He's a prick.
Yeah, I mean, Rangers definitely seem to have totally lost their way. It's all kind of stemmed. It's just unravelled for them after Brendan went to Ibrox and put them back in their box in a game that they were expecting to win comfortably. That's had a ripple effect already. You're seeing that, and they're struggling to get over what happened on that day. I think it's still haunting them even now. And I look at it, and I've seen the highlights of their game against Motherwell. They were very fortunate, if you ask me, to get out of that game at home with 3 points. There was talk they were time wasting and all sorts towards the end at home to Motherwell, which just is quite a ridiculous notion to even be contemplating if you're serious about putting in, title challenges. And I just look at it, and I can't see Mickey Beale lasting. He's going to need the League Cup, I think, to actually manage to get anything positive from the fan base, and even that won't be straightforward for him. Granted, they've got Livingston at home, a game you'd expect them to win midweek, but after that, the odds are they're probably going to have to go through the likes of Aberdeen, Hearts, Hibs, a combination of those two, to actually win that trophy, and that is by no means a certainty for them with the way that they are playing at the moment. And I think I think the fans have already begun to turn on them. You could see that. You can see it clear as day that they don't really believe in him anymore. And if it does go the way I expect, and I think it will, that he'll be sacked before we even play them next come Christmas, I think he'll be gone. I don't think he'll be in the dugout at Celtic Park when we next play them. Then again, it will point towards another trophy heading to Celtic in the form of the League Championship. Again, that's going to give you the additional Champions League money, a more lucrative Champions League to be involved in, again with the reformatting that's going to happen next year in the competition. Then Celtic once again will be asked the question, and we'll go back to what we were asking in the summer, is are the board going to push the boat out a little bit and actually try not just push further on domestically, of course. I think they're already quite comfortable with where we're at domestically, and this is why my concern would be, because Rangers aren't looking as strong as they were perhaps a couple of years ago when they were getting to a European final, on the back of winning the league on that COVID season. I just wonder, and my concern is with the Celtic board, is that they might just take their foot off the pedal and go the other way, because they tend to focus more on what's happening in our own playing field, in our own back garden, domestic football, and they're thinking, oh, this is comfy and cushy. They're going through managers like there's no tomorrow. We can kind of get away with it. We've actually probably weakened our team over the summer in a lot of ways. We can probably get away with not having to strengthen as much because they are so poor, and that is the ultimate risk you could have there. They could end up, we've got whatever it is, 72 million in the bank just now. You add another Champions League campaign on next year, you're going to be talking, that's another, 30, 40 million quid coming in straight off the bat before you add in all the other sort of revenues you're going to get throughout next season too. Celtic need to make sure that they're spending. And that is going to be so important if things go the way I expect them to this year. Celtic shouldn't be spending because they need to spend to be necessarily better than Rangers. They're going to take a bit of time to get better. Celtic need to be spending to try and improve themselves as a club and actually back themselves for once, rather than just trying to be better than whatever is facing them across the side.
Well, yeah, absolutely, that's true as well. And whatever it is across the city, they'll do a good enough job of car crashing that every single time. That might lead to the more relaxed nature of our board to other matters, and even strengthen this team progressively, which I would like to see, as opposed to it being reactionary. But whilst the competition from across the city seems to be so futile, I think for whatever reason that leads us up a path where we become more complacent and more lethargic, shall we say, in the transfer window than what we should be. And I think more optimistic in the sense that some players coming in may do a better job than what really we should be expecting of them to do. They shouldn't all be expected to hit the ground running. And I think a lot of them are development players as opposed to players that should be expected to take on a Celtic jersey and then make it their own instantaneously. And because there is no sprinkling of experienced signings, oven ready players, I like to call them, I think then there's almost an unfair pressure on those who do come in to be held to a higher standard than what's really wanted of them. Is that fair?
It's one of those ones where, yeah, if you're bringing in the development players and they're going to take a wee bit of time, a lot of them to settle in, and they're going to have to be allowed that time to actually gel as a team, then you're naturally going to end up having to be a bit patient with them, and there is natural frustrations, and it's very easy when things aren't going our way in European football to look at it and turn around and be like, well, we've got these players in, and they're going to take X number of months potentially to get up to the levels that we're going to need them to, because they're going to need that bit of extra coaching from Brendan Rodgers and the whole Champions League spectrum experience, etc. They just don't have it. Whereas if you get somebody in who, as you say, is oven ready, then you're not necessarily going to have those same problems. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get it right completely. Some players just won't settle for whatever reason, but it definitely does do is increase your probabilities at the big table. If you're playing it like a casino, the better chances you have is, to actually back yourself and get the best players into the positions that you need them in, rather than relying on players that just, are maybe going to be able to make it. And if they are going to be able to make it, you're probably going to have to go through pain like what we've seen with Home last week, where he gets himself sent off for being absolutely rash and having a complete rush of blood. But that's not to say potentially, maybe in a couple of years, he might end up being an integral player for us in these competitions once he gets that experience and once he kind of understands what it means to play at that level and is able to kind of calm his game down slightly. I'm just using him as one example. But I think there's definitely some merits in bringing in players that are ready to make that jump at the Champions League. I think Celtic, though, are so stuck in their ways with bringing in players cheap to then sell on to improve their balance sheets when the accounts come out each year, that I just don't see them necessarily doing that. The only time I can see situations like that happening is, if they're available like as a free agent, something along those sort of lines, or there's a deal to be made where the players actually pushing to come back to Celtic, like we thought perhaps with Kieran Tierney over the summer. But outside of that, I'm just not convinced that Celtic as a board have that level of ambition to go out and get those players. I think they've demonstrated that in the summer window when I think most of us expected that to happen. and then it never did. I was convinced in the summer that they were going to back Brendan to the hilt, and that was why he was brought back in. And after that's not happened, I have to say I'm a lot more wary with this board than I was, a couple of months back when we were in the summer transfer window, and I was feeling, reasonably confident. I just think it's going to be project players from now on in, and we'll hope some of them are successes.
It's a strange philosophy that they seem to have that actually doesn't bear any resemblance to anyone in a comparable situation to Celtic. There's no other team with 60,000 fans, 52,000 season ticket holders, relentless access to the Champions League that actually operates the model Celtic do. So I know where they've got it from, because it's bullshit when people say, it's a modern way of going. It's fucking nonsense. They're selling a pup. Michael McDonald comes in. Great to have you on the bus, Michael. He's a fashionista. In the comments, Jonathan is usually always commenting about people's clobber. Seems to be his thing. But Michael says he'd like to see one of the TV documentaries done for Celtic. I don't think they would want that close a look on them. I don't think they could handle any of that in the boardroom. I think that would be a expose that they would never recover from, Michael, if I'm honest. Or it would be a front they would need to put on where inevitably the mask would slip. They would put down to TV editing, and they would literally end up looking like, I think, the charlatans that they are. I think the likelihood of Celtic ever giving that sort of access all areas sort of documentary like Sunderland did, remember, which is an amazing 2-series thing. It gave you that access, and I appreciate a lot of editing was done in that to make certain situations look worse for certain individuals in particular, or to maybe make a scene look more dramatic than it was, and get a wee clip from someone putting their head in their hands or the hand on their head, whatever you want to call it, after a certain bit of news, and they clip it together and make it look like an instant reaction to it. And I get these things are dramatized, but that's how you get the views, of course. I don't think Celtic would want anything like that access. Not the player side or the managerial side. I think Brendan would be more than up for access all areas. Celtic documentary. I'm sure he'd quite like to, flash his stuff, Jonathan, on screen, but there's absolutely no way that board would ever want any sort of discussion that they have out there. I think that's telling in itself. Anyway, we will move on because it's that dreaded time of a Monday. I know you're all looking forward to it. Jonathan's looking forward to it. It's me getting beat yet again on Saturn Death, and there he is, the man making his way back to first team fitness. Phil McGinley, you are looking a lean machine, mate. Looking fantastic. Loving the shirt as well. Hope you're good.
Thanks a lot, mate. Yeah, I've been putting in the hours, definitely hours at the gym recently. So
you're looking fab.
2.5 stone I've lost in 11 and a bit weeks, so I'm going pretty good.
So
just keep
going.
That's
the dedication we need. Dyson would be proud of you, mate.
God, I'm not quite up to that level yet.
He'll take you out for a run if you keep this up, Phil.
Oh my God, no! The idea of running right now, Jesus, man, no, I can't do that now. Definitely already there, but hey, maybe one day I can get up to that level.
You're on a roll.
On the right track at the moment.
So. That should be inspiring. Anyone who's watching, you can definitely do it if you just put your mind to it. Big McGinley leading the way. Proud of you, mate.
Oh, that's good, Russell. Is that what you've been telling yourself in the mirror in the build up to this tonight? I feel like you've been rehearsing that line.
Mate, I'm going the other way. I'm putting weight on like it's no tomorrow, man. Honestly.
Oh, I'm not talking about weight. I'm talking about this quiz.
Put your mind to sudden death, mate. Come on, you can do it.
You can do it if you put your mind to it, Russell. Come on.
I've not said that. No, I've accepted my fate.
Yeah, well, the score is currently 5-2, so you need to close that gap soon. There
was a Smith song called "I Know It's Over," and I feel very much in the midst of that already.
He's flying the flag of surrender already. No, come on, you need to get the fighting talk going here, Russell. But yeah, it is currently 5-2 to John, 3 points in it just now. But we saw last season these can be overcome. These deficits can definitely be toppled. But yeah, of course, it is that time for the penalty shootout style competition, sudden death between the brothers Boyce. So yeah, I've got a question lined up here, multiple answers, and of course, they just give me a right answer, they score, and of course, if they give me a wrong answer, they miss. Yeah, and the person who goes second in the shootout is obviously entitled to a clue, a hint, a riddle, whatever you want to call it. It will be there's something that they can cash in during it if they are struggling for an answer. But as we found out since that rule was brought in, it doesn't necessarily bring in benefits. But we'll just wait and see. You don't know what it'll be until I drop it. So yeah, I will get all the aesthetics again set up, guys. And if you've got the energy, Russell, to try and talk any sort of trash here, any fighting talk, then go ahead. But I can sense the mood. I can sense the mood music here.
He's feeling sorry for himself. He's feeling sorry. He needs Brendan to come and pick him back up. He needs to be like that wee boy. He's Brendan's arm around his shoulder.
The big Lion King. I'm a cup against the big Lion King, Jonathan. Who's the football fountain of knowledge? Shut up. We'll see how we do. We'll see how we go tonight. We'll see how we go.
Oh, I like it. There's a little bit of fight left in the old dog yet.
That is
old.
Like old Yeller. We're about to take you behind the shed and put you down, I think. This doesn't have much longer to run, I don't feel. I feel like
disclaimer.
You peaked in season 1.
At no point has Jonathan or anyone in the family took dogs behind the shed and put them down. Just before like that gets like that catches wildfire, like that's not a habit that we're in. Fucking hell. Take you behind the shed and put you down. Fucking crazy pints you've been drinking before we started. Fucking hell.
Just my orange juice.
Well, things have taken an interesting turn there, folks. Well, that fighting talk out the way, let's get into it. So, Jonathan, you won the last game that you and Russell played against each other. So, do you wish to go first, or do you wish to go second and give Russell the clue? Or do you want to go second and get the clue?
Okay, I'll go first. Russell can have his clue. He likes his clue.
Okay, that's fine, Andy. Right, okay, let's get into it. So, guys, there are 21 answers in this one. So, a nice, generous one. Lots of answers to go. And it is a Celtic-related question. You will be happy
I like
to know.
That.
And also, it's quite topical as well, because there is actually of something this week. It'll be as the week gets on, we get closer to the game at the weekend. There will be obviously something we're discussing, because goalkeepers are definitely something we're discussing. Because obviously, Joe Hart having a mad one at the weekend, getting himself sent off, and Scott Bain will probably be in goals now for the Motherwell game at the weekend. So with that in mind, guys, let's focus on our current 3 first-team goalkeepers, Hart, Bain and Siegrist. And all I want you guys to tell me is any club that they have got on their CV, any of the 3 of them, Hart, Bain or Siegrist, just any clubs that they have played for.
Okay.
So you've got a few you can go to here.
I will start with Manchester City.
Yeah, of course, Man City is a correct answer, yes.
Birmingham.
Yeah, Birmingham City. Joe Hart had a loan spell at Brum.
That's very good, Russell. I will say Tottenham Hotspur.
Yeah, Tottenham Hotspur. Very sparse with the games, but yeah, Joe Hart was on Tottenham's books for a spell.
I will go with Dennis Law's old club, Torino.
Torino, yes, that is indeed correct. Yep.
I shall go for Dundee United.
Yeah, Dundee United, honestly. Benjamin Siegrist. Yes.
Joe Hart again. I think I'm right, Shrewsbury.
Yeah, Shrewsbury Town. Well done, mate.
Yeah, I remember that.
Another loan spell. Yep.
I didn't know you were such a big Joe Hart fanboy. That's just quite impressive.
Massive fan.
Love it.
Massive fan.
Love a bit of Joe Hart. Must have been the hair, the Head and Shoulders adverts. Must have been them that did it for you. Dundee.
Dundee is a Scott Bain club. I think he was at Dundee or Hibs and turned up with a Hibs trackie on while on loan to Dundee. Signed for us.
Yeah,
so.
You can't say Hibs because he never played for Hibs. Is that right?
Yeah.
We're in trouble now. How many more are there?
Loads. Says it was 21 to start. You've got loads to go. Loads.
Oh, I don't know. I'm already out. Siegrist played in England. Who did he play for? They were shite. I can't get it. I don't know it. I just don't know it. I'm going to say Siegrist. Fleetwood? I don't know who is that.
Fleetwood Town's the wrong answer, I'm afraid, Russell. That's a miss. So Jonathan, I think, could win it with this one. Yeah, Jonathan, if you give me a
Oh,
right
never
answer,
asked for a clue. I'm an idiot.
I know, man, you had that clue there. But if Jonathan does miss, keeps you in it.
To be honest, I don't know any actual certain ones either anymore. I'm struggling with this one too, to be honest with you. I'm going to end up having to take a guess at somebody. I'm going to go... I feel like Bain must have played for some other Scottish clubs. I'm going to guess St Mirren.
St Mirren's wrong. It keeps Russell in it. It does indeed, but he's got to get one right here to take it to sudden death.
So what's the score?
It's currently 4-3, but this is your last kick, so you have to make it 4-4.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, take my clue.
Okay, this is a whopper of a clue because it's a 50-50 answer. So if you don't get it, Jono might get it. Okay, it's one of Seagrass clubs. I'm going to tell you right now. A name you associate with the annual university boat race, so it's one or the other.
Oh God!
So if you get it, fine. But if you don't get it, you're pretty much leaving it open for Jono to score an open goal.
I don't think you need to worry because I don't know who that is.
Okay.
Oxford.
It's not Oxford, and Jonathan has won because that is 2 misses.
Oh, so it's Cambridge.
It was Cambridge. Cambridge United was the other one. Yep. The annual boat race between the two universities, Cambridge and Oxford.
Game.
That's a shame. That clue would not have helped because I had no idea what he was talking about when he was talking about the boat races there.
Yeah.
I don't know what these are.
A famous scoreline 6-2 just now to Jonathan, I'm afraid. So, yeah.
When the chips are down, Russell, eh? Just can't catch a break.
So do I know all the rest of them? Do I know all the rest of them?
Yeah, go on.
So Joe Hart, the ones that you didn't get on him were Tranmere Rovers, a loan spell. Blackpool, he had a loan spell. West Ham United, he was at West Ham and he was at Burnley.
Yeah.
West Ham and Burnley. We didn't really get many games, but he was at both of them. Scott Bain did play for a few other Scottish clubs: Aberdeen, Elgin City, Alloa or Athletic. And Russell shot himself in the foot, mate, because the question was just any team that's on their CVs. So he did have Hibs on his CV.
No, you said he played for.
Well, he
played for. You did. That's why I said I can't go Hibs.
Oh man, I had Hibs as an answer because I've got my question there at anyone on their CV. Because
Tottenham,
I even played for Tottenham.
When you said Hibs, because you'd said Hibs, I was thinking, they must not have played for Hibs. So I just scored that out.
So, and Aston Villa was one of the Seagrass ones.
He's not played for.
Burton Albion, Cambridge United, Wycombe Wanderers, and he also played for the capital city of Liechtenstein. Everybody knows Vaduz, and one I don't know how the hell this got on his CV. Nobody ever got this one. I can't even think of a clue for this one. He played for like a non-league team called Solihull Moors as well on loan. I was like, fair enough, nobody will get that. I can't even put a clue together for that one. But yeah, it was in the end it was quite a mixture there going on. But his Hart was definitely the go-to one. He had the most mainstream choices, I think. But yeah. It's,
the fans are on my side. They're on my side. They know what I said. Let Bhoycie first.
Well, you didn't say Hibs then, so it would have been contentious then if I'd said Hibs was the right answer.
You're moving the goalposts, Phil. Moving the goalposts.
Phil, didn't he listen to him? He's just taken out on the poor referee now. He's got that.
Well, from my point of view, Jonathan, I'm saying that he's missed an open goal, but I say he didn't say Hibs as an answer, so we didn't get that contentious point where I would have went, oh, well, that's a right answer. That people would have said, oh, no, wait, he's not played for Hibs. But I say I've got it down my question here of what's on their CV. So, anyway, but in the end...
It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. I'll take on the chin. I get beat most weeks anyway. Anyway, that has been a fun wee Monday Club. 127 of you still on this bus. Make sure you give us a wee like, give us a share, slag the hair. And as always, if you are out there, keep your eyes on this board. Good night.